It's a curious paradox that the more I'm able to accept myself, the more I change. And yet most of us approach change in a much different way. We don't approach it by accepting ourselves exactly as we are. We're in conflict with ourselves. And that conflict makes us feel bad about ourselves and makes us want to, kind of crack the whip and make us change. And it turns out that the way change, personal change, inner change happens for a human being is it begins absolutely in the complete acceptance of yourself, strength, flaws, and all.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Don Joseph Goewey, who is the executive director of the Anthony DeMello Foundation, and he's back to talk about their new book. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and create harmony to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote comes from Rumi. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built up against it. We're going to go deep on this quote today. But before we do, I want you to think about something. Consider the movement of the Earth's surface with respect to the planet's center. The Earth rotates once every 24 hours. That means that the surface of the Earth moves at the speed of roughly 1,000 miles per hour. We learn that the Earth is moving around our sun. It's an almost circular orbit. It covers that route at a speed of 67,000 miles per hour. In addition, our solar system, the Earth and everything, the sun and all the other planets, they're whirring around the center of the galaxy at 490,000 miles per hour. It's amazing how fast everything's going. There's no human intervention. There's no fuel. It's just happening. I think if it weren't for gravity in our atmosphere, we'd probably get blown away. I don't even feel the fact that I'm flying through space at that kind of speeds. We don't even know what's out there in space at much of a distance. We don't even know what's in the depths of the ocean here on Earth. Know what else we don't know? The depths of our mind. And today, we're going to get a little closer to that. Our guest, Don, joined us back in episode 249. He is back again. Here is the premise that we're going to chat about. People are asleep. They are living on delusions, on crazy ideas about everything. About love, about relationships, about happiness, about joy, about what the world should be and who they should be and what they should want. Spirituality is about waking up. Don Joseph Goewey is the executive director of the Center of Spiritual Exchange, which is the official archive for all the works of Anthony DeMello. Previously, he directed a human performance firm that consulted with Fortune 100 companies to alleviate employee stress and elevate people's experience of work and life. He also managed the Department of Psychiatry at Stanford University Medical School and headed the Center for Attitudinal Healing, the institute founded by Gerald Jampolsky M.D., which pioneered a psycho-spiritual approach to overcoming catastrophic life events. He is the author of the Amazon bestseller, The End of Stress: 4 Steps to Rewire Your Brain, which is based on the breakthroughs in neuroscience that facilitate the shift in mindset that changes brain structure to quiet stress reactions and amplify the higher brain functions that predict greater success and happiness in life. Let's welcome Don back again. Welcome back to Richer Soul, Don Joseph Goewey. It's great to have you join us again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's catch up since the last time you were here. Can you share a little bit about what's going on with Anthony DeMello's foundation and some of the new things that have come about?
Well, sure. Yeah, I would love to. You know, one of the exciting things we've done is we've opened up a community, and it's a sort of a Facebook kind of platform in which people can come and, you know, post what they want to post, get into dialogues and conversations with one another. It's a platform in which we can do workshops, in which we can do, you know, a 1-hour seminar, a kind of ad hoc seminar, as well as a several week course, and where people can download videos. We do polls. We do all kinds of things, you know, the sort of a social media, Facebook kind of thing. And the response has been pretty good so far. We've got about 1,000 people that are active there. And all you have to do is to go to DeMelloCommunity.com and sign up, and you'll be a part of it. And if you want, you'll get notifications when new things are posted, new stuff is been added. And then the other thing is we'll be talking, I guess, a little bit about is this book here that just came out in December, and it's called A Year with Anthony DeMello, Waking Up Week by Week. And the book basically took the format that Anthony DeMello used when he was alive for conducting workshops at Fordham University. And those workshops, which went worldwide through media hookups, through video hookups. And so we followed that format very carefully. And so what the book does is each week you get about a page and a half, sometimes 2 pages of narrative from Tony DeMello, followed by one of his favorite stories that relates to that narrative. And then 2 things you can do, 2 practices that you can put into play during that week that will, you know, bring you into an experience of what that narrative is talking about that is either positively going on inside of you or holding you back. And, you know, the main thing with Tony DeMello is that, you know, we've all had stamped into us beliefs that are fundamentally untrue. And in particularly stamping into us a belief that happiness and self-worth are found out there in the world. And if we work long and hard enough, those things of self-worth and happiness will be fulfilled, and we can relax and enjoy our life. And we end up waiting a very long time to have what's available to us always, right here, right now. And so that's the central theme of this book as well, driving that point home and giving us a way of taking that transformational step back in to our given nature, our true nature that gets blocked by this one that got stamped into us. That's not natural. It's one that's been indoctrinated, one that we've learned, and one that blocks our first nature.
Is this done on purpose, this blocking? Is it just human nature? Is it societal? Like, where does that come from?
Well, it comes from society. It comes from a society's, intention to control the population. It comes from the way in which we're parented, the way in which we're educated, from kindergarten on up, to the way in which we are brought into religion that gives us a number of messages about who we are and what we're here for and how things work here. And many of them are false, and they are subjugating. They're quite subjugating, and they really do end up controlling us. We become kind of little automatons that, follow orders pretty well. And certainly the machinery of society works better when society controls us. But our inner life doesn't work better, not at all. In fact, it gets blocked. And it's what Rumi meant in the poem he wrote when he said, our work is not to seek love, but to find the barriers, the blocks that have been placed against it. And one of the major blocks that have been placed against men is attachments. We are constantly programmed, directly and indirectly, directly through the way we've been taught to get in line and not make waves and do what we're told to do, all the way through our educational process, the way in which we're told in religion that we're fundamentally sinful, there's something in us that's broken, that's flawed, that we can't fix on our own, and as well as the way in which advertising world works and the media world works to control us and program them into buying certain products. And so all of that works against us to block our first nature. And the evidence, the scientific evidence of our first nature is that it's alive and well. It's what makes us happy for no reason. It's what makes us loving, which allows us to be at peace, to rest within our own hearts. It allows us to be creative, optimistic, energetic. It's a very dynamic force that's operating within us, and it can be easily detected. Most of what science looks to is children when they want to see what is our first nature, what is a human being's basic nature. And what you see in a child before they're programmed, before they're contaminated and socialized, is a very free and open and creative and loving nature that's made happily quite easily, made joyful quite easily, and that it actually is quite resilient. Kids fall down, they get banged around, they jump right back up. I was noticing it with my grandchildren. There was a lot of rain on a rainy day. They couldn't go out and play. They were getting antsy. So I just threw a bunch of blank paper and crayons out on the dining room table, and I didn't hear from them for hours. They were gone. They were perfectly happy in their natural way of being. And we've lost that. We've lost touch with that because it's been programmed out of us. It's been stamped out of us. And basically what's been stamped into us is the belief that, if we work long and hard enough, fall in line and do the job we're here to do, eventually we'll realize happiness, we'll realize a sense of fulfillment. And, we all have swallowed that formula, and 10 years later we realize that all those successes come, to whatever degree it has come without fulfillment. It's a proverbial midlife crisis, where people say there's something missing in my life, and I don't know what it is. And that's failing at living. And waking up is a realization that, contrary to what we've been taught, what society has stamped into us, nothing, but absolutely nothing of the world can make us happy. It's not that success doesn't matter. It does, of course, but success is not the same as fulfillment. And it's a big confusion that we have. Fulfillment doesn't come from the world. Happiness doesn't come from the world. Not that radiant happiness of a child that I've been talking about that's constant, that makes us smile for no reason. That happiness comes from within. And the truth is that there's not a single moment in our lives when we don't have everything we need to be happy. And the only reason we're ever unhappy is because we are focusing on what we don't have rather than what we have right here, right now. The simple act. One of these days, the last couple of weeks, I was complaining about something. The old complaining program was taking over. There was a great quote from Suzuki. Somebody asked him, how will I know when I'm enlightened? That was the question. How will I know when I'm enlightened? And Suzuki, the great master, said, when you have stopped complaining. And it's really true. I found myself complaining, and I caught it. Awareness is a great tool for catching, the pre-programmed way of relating to the world. And I just stepped back and began to look around and really count my blessings. The old thing our grandparents said, just count your blessings. And in very short order, I was in a whole new world, completely different from the seeking world, the complaining world. And so that's what DeMello is talking about. He's saying we've been hypnotized. It's like we've been dragged up on stage and hypnotized not to see what is there that surrounds us, that's all around us, and to see something that's not there. And so waking up is dropping all of that attachment to having this and having that. It's not that you don't enjoy the world. It's not that you don't have goals and seek success out in the world, but you don't confuse that with happiness. Those are wonderful things. Your successes are wonderful things. Your possessions are wonderful things. The things you want, they're fine. Enjoy them. But, if you get them, fine. If you don't get them, don't let your happiness be at stake over it. Let your, relax and let your true nature arise. And you'll be in a whole new world. You'll be in a whole new life.
And in the beginning of the book, they talk about that. It's a quote from Anthony about being a child. And he says how sad it is that we pass through life and never see it through the eyes of a child again. We need to return to paradise. We need to be redeemed again. We need to put off the old man, the old nature, the conditioned self, and return to the state of the child, but without being a child. We lose our wonder, right? We lose our enthusiasm, our constant learning, and our constant exploring what's going on out there.
Yes, absolutely. We walk right past it. We're surrounded by beauty. We're surrounded by a divinity there to make our life full, rich, meaningful, and we walk right past it. I went to the window the other day. I was actually over the sink and just kind of washing up some dishes, and I was looking out the window, and my wife had put in a small little vase this beautiful tulip. It's tulip time around here. And it was this beautiful orange and pink tulip. And it was just sitting there, and it was very full of its life. It hadn't wilted at all. And streaming through the window was sunlight. And it was, for about 5 seconds, it was an absolutely perfect moment. By definition, it was divine in and of itself. And I just opened to it. But so much of my life, until I would say the last 10 years, I used to walk by that. I'd be up in my head so much I wouldn't see that. A child sees it all the time. Child would take that tulip down and stare at it longer than I did, even that day. There's so many things to wake up to. And what it takes is breaking down this programming, this blocking us. What it takes is awareness. bringing into awareness what it is that is running in the background, the negative things that we're thinking, turning into the upsetting emotions that we're experiencing, that we call stress, that we call anxiety, that we call depression, and not approaching them with a need to change anything, with the goal of turning it into something else, something more positive, just to simply be present with what is, and to observe it, and to come to understand it. And you'll come to understand it intuitively. Out of the blue, you'll see where this negativity is coming from. One time I was walking to my office, and I was struck. I think I talked about this in the last program. I was struck by a feeling of dread. And I stopped, and everything was going just fine. My life was working fine. I had really nothing to be worried or afraid of, but there was this dread. And the dread, when I sat down with it, brought it into awareness, I realized that what I was saying is that it's when everything goes fine that something bad has always happened. And I looked at that. I was surprised that I carried that thought. And what flashed intuitively before my mind was my childhood. I didn't have a very happy childhood. And I would be out having a good time with my pals, and I'd come home and bam, some kind of horror would come down on me. And that's how I got programmed into this feeling of dread. And the next thing I realized is that wasn't the first time I'd had that feeling. I've been having it my whole life. That and I couldn't imagine how many days it had soured for me. And just the act of bringing it in awareness, and that awareness turning into understanding, has quieted that. It still comes up, but when I see it, I pass it by. It's like you're walking down a city street, you look down a dark alley, and you tell yourself, I'm not going down that alley. Nothing good has ever come from that. It's sort of like that. And that through awareness that I came to understand what's blocking the happiness that's in me. And the rest of my day, after I sat with that, brought it into awareness, was far, far better than it would have been if that old program had run in me. It had its way.
And it's good that you have that awareness to be able to constantly challenge. But see, this is surprising because in the beginning of the book, Anthony says, everyone's life is a mess. They don't want to admit it. They are upset, angry, and have anxiety, but they don't actually want to solve it. They want a prescription to cover it up. Why don't they want to solve their problems?
Well, there's a couple of things going on there. One is they are so normalized to upsetting themselves. They've been literally programmed to upset themselves. Something, there's an old line from Bob Dylan, if something's not right, it's wrong. And so we're constantly finding fault with things, finding fault with ourselves, and it becomes normalized. And we're on autopilot. We're running this kind of autopilot. It's literally programmed into our brain. The stress reactions we have are literally programmed into our brain. And they come from habituated thought patterns. And we've come to think of it as normal. A lot of people think of stress as normal, just, a normal part of life. Fear as a normal part of life. It's not something you can ever overcome. And so that becomes their attitude, the way in which they see it and they approach it. A lot of people don't even understand how stressed they are. I've worked with police officers who jobs are pretty stressful, and you interview them initially and try to discover how much stress that they have, and you can't get much out of them. No, I don't have any stress. They kind of think of stress as a badge of courage. And then the next step is you run them through a bunch of medical tests and find out that they're not only stressed, they're clinically stressed, meaning that there are physiological and health problems that that are on the rise within them. Heart failure is on the rise, gastrointestinal problems, all kinds of problems. But you talk to them, no, I'm fine. We're oblivious, we're unconscious to it, which is why we need the tool of awareness. That's core to it, absolutely core to bringing into the conscious awareness the kind of negative patterns that are operating within us automatically. And as we do that, those patterns that are actually wired into our brain, they actually weaken those synapses that are firing them off in knee-jerk kind of fashion. They begin to really kind of quiet down. And as a result, we're less anxious, we're less stressed, we're less producing the hormonal level of stress that eventually bottoms out as depression. That begins to clear up. But it only clears up as we become willing to look at ourselves, to look at the way in which we function, the negative kinds of ways in which we're functioning, without condemning ourselves for it. It's not our fault. I mean, who would go through their lives intentionally upsetting themselves, intentionally making themselves afraid or stressed? No one would. It's your programming. And so as you begin to confront it and look at it, bring it into conscious awareness, you begin to weaken it. I mean, that's the whole point of psychotherapy. The whole point of psychotherapy is to begin to bring into conscious awareness what's been functioning unconsciously in your life and making your life not work. But, we're all running the same game, so we all think it's normal, and we don't even question it. We don't even question it. And we even collude with each other to keep it going. So we got to wake up. Spirituality is about waking up. And waking up, the only way in which we wake up is by bringing those negative patterns into awareness, seeing the thought patterns that are turning into the emotional upsets, not condemning ourselves for them, reminding ourselves that this is in me, this has been programmed into me. Tony DeMello even goes as far as to say, don't say, I am afraid. That's identifying with an emotion. Rather say, fear is there right now. Depression is there right now. Stress is there right now. Get in touch with it. And then what you notice as you do this a few times, it passes. Sometimes you don't even notice that it passed, but it passes. It's gone. It's because it's an illusion. And that's how you get free of it, when it's gone. And then as you begin to even become conscious of how, and when it passes, you can relax into it. And you begin to understand what it means to free yourself. You're freeing yourself of a pattern within your unconscious that doesn't work for you, and is predicated on a series of beliefs that you're holding, that you've been trained to hold, that aren't even true. And so what you come to understand is that fundamentally, you're not broken. You're not some problem to be solved. You're okay. Your basic nature is still intact. And if there's a problem, it's a way that you were programmed to believe that without something or some person or some result, you can't be happy, you can't be fulfilled in life, and it's a false belief. You don't acquire or earn happiness because you have it already. It's just blocked.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. And so I'm assuming the purpose of the book is to help unblock it. and
Yes.
to take you through. Yet the book is laid out over 52 weeks. So is this going to take us a year?
Well, it might take some people a year. Somebody might get it on the first week. Depends. The old story in mysticism is that they talk about person's spirituality as being like a log. So if you throw a green log on a fire, it smokes. Can't see anything in the room. You put a seasoned log on a fire, it bursts into flames. So depending on the amount of inner work, depending on the severity and of the programming that you've undergone, the amount of childhood trauma that you've experienced in your life, depending on that, will depend on how long it takes. But the truth of the matter is that when we do wake up, it's almost always a matter of grace. We're surprised. Something comes in kind of sideways when we least expect it, and we have a moment of insight in which we see clearly, and it's an insight that we can build on, we can grow from, which brings other insights, and they reach a point of synergy in which we sort of explode open. And that can happen to anybody under any conditions. So it's hard to tell. But, week by week, things will be opening up in you as you go through this book. They can't help but to open up to you as long as you are willing to be open to the material. It doesn't mean to be gullible, but to suspend your belief, just to be willing to hear something new, to try on something new, to look at yourself and the world, to look at the events in your life a little differently, to be open to challenging some of your beliefs, to testing them, to poking at them, to seeing, are these really true? To ask the question, and then let what resonates within you create your direction forward. You're the student. You get to choose the course you want to take, and this is just another course that you can take. But if you're going to take it and spend time with it, be open to it. It's going to challenge your belief systems. It's going to challenge your status quo. Let it challenge it. And then see, if your heart resonates with the message. And in those chapters where your heart doesn't resonate with the message, move on. You be the determinant. You're more than capable of coming to your own best answers for yourself. So approach it that way. That's very important. That openness is very important as you move through it.
And Anthony says in the opening parts with the instructions that you have to mull it over a couple times, to continue to read it, to challenge it, to test it, not to just accept it as gospel, but to constantly work through it and see if it is true, see how it applies in your life, and
yes,
and to make it your own at some point.
Yes, absolutely. You will. If you approach it that way, you will make it your own. It's also the truth that as you go through it, mull it over, come back to it. You'll find in this book, he repeats at various points things he said before, and he does that intentionally. And you might hear something differently when you hear it the second time. People often talk about when they read a book a second time, they saw things that they missed before. And so it's that kind of activity. And so this book gives you an opportunity to step into a process like that and to grow with it in the way that you just talked about, to grow with it until it becomes your own, until it becomes, because it is your own awakening. Only you can wake up yourself. Tony DeMello, his book, any book, isn't going to awaken you. You awaken yourself.
So let's kind of dig in. I took some quotes from week 1 and week 2. Let's just look at them and kind of give a flavor of what's going on. So
Sure.
in week 1, it says each day this week, before stepping into your everyday routine, ask yourself, what do I want to make of my existence here on earth? Then bring it closer, asking, how do I want to live my life today? Think of how you will seek autonomy and freedom, the risks you dare to take, the discomforts you shall welcome, the changes you will be open to. And I think that's a big part of this, right? We are going to have to take risks. We may face discomfort, and we need to be open up to changes and challenges. This is not, I don't know that it's an easy process. It takes time.
Yes, it does. It's a simple process that gets easier the more you apply it. But in the beginning, something simple can be lost on us. It can feel kind of confusing. It's spirituality kind of turns everything upside down in so many ways. Like for example, the whole idea of acceptance. That I think Carl Rogers said that it's a curious paradox that the more I'm able to accept myself, the more I change. And yet most of us approach change in a much different way. We don't approach it by accepting ourselves exactly as we are. We're in conflict with ourselves. And that conflict makes us feel bad about ourselves and makes us want to, kind of crack the whip and make us change. And it turns out that the way change, personal change, inner change happens for a human being is it begins absolutely in the complete acceptance of yourself, strength, flaws, and all. You just begin, and what happens from that is you relax. You let down your guard, you let down your hair, you open up. You're able to look at yourself honestly without judging yourself. And out of that, and accept yourself. And out of that ability to relax and understand yourself, you're not broken. There's just some things going on here that have always been going on here that I need to embrace. And I need to have the faith, the trust that as I embrace them, they'll quiet down, they'll change. And it is a paradox, complete paradox of why things work that way. It's the same way in relationships. If you've ever done couples counseling, the first thing that you got to get people to do is to stop focusing on each other. They're pointing the finger at each other, and to step back and to accept each other exactly as the other person is, without any demand on that person that they change in a way that you think they need to, in the way that you want them. And when that happens between couples, the relationship actually begins to change. Now there's the freedom to work on yourself, the freedom to look at yourself. Up until that point, you've been blocked by, all the self-doubt, self-dissatisfaction, self-condemnation that you experience about not liking the way that you are, or thinking that you're not good enough, which is very, shame-based thinking. You have to drop that, and the way you drop that is by accepting yourself exactly as you are, loving yourself exactly as you are. And that's a very simple precept, but initially it can feel like it's hard to do. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. The more you end up with a smile on your face instead of a frown.
I find that there's a lot of things in life that are simple to do, but doing simple is hard. And I find a lot of people don't want to look in the mirror and reflect on themselves. They tend to want to look outside and blame something else for the problems that they're facing.
Well, that's what happens, when we're in conflict with ourselves, it becomes painful. And the natural psychological projection of what we do when we're in that pain of conflict is going on inside of us is we project it out. It becomes too much for us to bear, so we project it out onto other people, into blaming other people, making other people responsible for this or that we don't like about ourselves. It's kind of the proverbial person who steps on the scale, finds out they're 10 pounds overweight, and they find themselves all that day judging even obese people. They disgusted with obese people since they've had this 10 pounds on. It's a projection. And that's just one simple example of it. It's going on all the time inside of us. And, we have to reach a point, and I think most people do. Some life crisis hits them where they reach a point where they get to the bottom of their misery, the bottom of the negativity that their mind is running, that their brain is programmed to run, and they've had enough. I don't want to do it like this anymore. There must be another way. And that's the beginning of profound change in a person's life if you respond to that. That's a calling from within to wake up and to begin to find the means for waking up that actually work. And so, for example, acceptance. It may sound silly to some people. Accepting yourself exactly as you are is how you change. Well, you've tried beating your head against the wall. You've tried projecting your judgments of yourself onto other people. You've tried all these kinds of things that only increased your misery. So you reach this point, well, let's step back. And maybe we have things upside down. Maybe let's turning things right side up is what you might find in this book with Tony DeMello. Give it a try. See if your misery, your upset, your stress, your unhappiness decreases, and begin to see that what begins to arise naturally within you is actually an experience that you want and have always wanted. This feeling of fulfillment. We think fulfillment is what we can get from the world. I'm fulfilled if I'm a success in my job. I'm fulfilled if I get that job. I'm fulfilled if I have things. I'm fulfilled if I find my soulmate. And, half of these soulmate relationships end in divorce, according to statistics. Midlife crisis is rampant. And, that's the midlife crisis of when you've worked long and hard to get to the good life, to feel the happiness, to be able to relax. And you find that, you're a ball of stress after all of that. That this promise of fulfillment, it didn't come from those things. And you feel despair. Like maybe that's just the way the world is. Maybe I'm fooling myself. That there is no real fulfillment, no real peace, no happiness I can extract from this world. And as long as you're looking to the world for it, you're making the colossal mistake that most human beings make. And when you reach that point, when it all bottoms out for you, when you give up, when you surrender, then the surrender is a turning inward, looking inside. Now you're willing to look inside. And what you find in this book, and all of Tony DeMello's books, is a path, a way of doing it that is in which you really begin to lighten up. When you think of the word enlightenment, if it's anything, it really is lightening up. You're not judging yourself so much. You're willing. Initially you might be afraid. You might feel insecure about looking at yourself in the mirror. And then as you begin to look at yourself in the mirror, and you're willing to see what's there, and you understand that it's not necessarily anything you did, that it's a way in which you've been programmed, and you also understand it does no good to blame society for it. That just keeps you stuck. You take responsibility for changing it. You're not responsibility for having been programmed the way you are, but you are responsibility for freeing yourself of that programming. And the way in which you free yourself from that programming is by bringing it into awareness, by being willing to feel what you're feeling and be willing to embrace the negativity and all the discomfort of it. And even as a judgment may arise, like, why am I this way? What's the matter with me? This self-condemnation you feel for yourself, to begin to bring that into awareness, to look at it, to understand the pain it causes you, to hear the words it speaks to you, the thoughts that are habitually running in your head, throwing its arrows at you, shooting its arrows at you all the time, to begin to see that. And as you begin to see that, you begin to understand this has nothing to do with you. This has to do with this programming. And as you begin to do that, you stop judging yourself. You begin to relax, and the whole process begins to slow down. And what's simple begins to become easier and easier to do. And looking in the mirror actually becomes a delight. You know, every time I find another layer of my programming that's causing me suffering, I'm excited. Okay, it's sort of like cleaning out a room, you know. You're wanting to clean out the room so you can finally live in it. But it's so crowded, you know, that you can't even habitat inside of it. So habitate inside of it. So that's what awareness is about. It's about cleaning out the room until the space opens up wide inside of you. And that space that opens up wide inside of you is your natural state of being. And you'll discover that the way it resonates with happiness. It resonates with peace. It resonates with wonder, the wonder of a child. It resonates with creativity. It loves challenges. It doesn't complain about problems because it sees problems as challenges, and I can't wait to solve it. I can't wait to get, you know, be like a kid with the paper, the blank paper and the crayons, and roll up my sleeves and solve this problem and move my life forward again. That's what Tony DeMello brings to us.
And I think it digs into that pretty quickly. So let's just touch on week 2. In week 2, it says, catch some of the subtle ways in which you're making your happiness depend on people, possessions, circumstances, and outcomes. Begin to question the belief that without money, power, success, approval, a good reputation, romance, friendship, spirituality, or even God, you cannot be happy. And so you're literally going in there and saying, okay, challenge all your belief systems, challenge what you think, and question them all and say, is that true? And
yes,
it's going to take time.
Well, it'll take as much time as it needs to take. You know, when it resolves, it's gone. And if it doesn't resolve, embrace it. Continue to embrace it. It's still there. It's your teacher. You know, and when you have finally learned what is coming from within you to learn, what the teacher within you is trying to express to you, that it's still there, embrace it. And be grateful that that's there. And what you're looking at, in that second chapter, is you're looking at your attachments. So, the Buddha said that all of suffering comes from attachments. The source of all of our suffering comes from attachments. And it is exactly those things that, you named there. It's a simple matter of asking yourself. I invite everybody, take a piece of paper, and the book actually does this as well. Take a piece of paper, and at the top, put a heading on it that says, I cannot be happy until or unless, and then start writing down what those things are. I cannot be happy until I have no debt. I cannot be happy until I never feel anxious again. I cannot be happy until my boss appreciates me. I cannot be happy until my wife or husband stops arguing with me. I cannot be happy until I have a brand new car. It goes on and on. It's interesting when I do this exercise with people how fast they fill it out, and then I invite them to come back and read the list to themselves. And I say, as you read this list, be aware that tell yourself, behold, here is my misery. Here's the source of all of my happiness. And again, it does not mean that you don't enjoy the world. DeMello's not about renouncing the world. If you want to have a brand new car, he doesn't object. No, he's not going to object at all. One uses the material world, one enjoys it. But one does not make the mistake of thinking that one's happiness depends on the material world, on those attachments. The irony is that when you're detached from those things, from the material world, as you pursue success, as you pursue your dreams and goals, you actually enjoy the process more than when you believe that your self-worth and your inner peace and your happiness depend on those outcomes happening. Some will happen, some won't. If you succeed, great, wonderful. If you fail, your happiness and self-worth are not at stake. But you got to understand what it is, how they're working you, how they're dragging you around, how they're subjugating you. And you have to understand them as a way in which this culture relentlessly programs you into believing that you need these attachments, whether they relate to things, whether they relate to reputation, whether they relate to outcomes you're trying to achieve, whether they relate to relationships you feel you must have, whatever they relate to, they're the source of your unhappiness. They're the source of your depression. And you clear them up by stop believing that they're necessary for you to be happy. They're completely unnecessary. Again, every moment we have everything we need to be happy. It's in our nature to be happy. It gets blocked, but it's in our nature to be happy. And the only reason we're ever unhappy is that we're focusing on what we don't have instead of what we have right here, right now. So be grateful, appreciate what you have. Go about your life with gratitude for how blessed you are, the many ways in which you are blessed, and you will be living, functioning in a completely different world than you did before.
Can you do this on your own? Or do you need a guide? Do you need someone to work with? Or is this completely possible to work through on your own?
Well, a guide helps. A psychotherapist, a good one, helps. An understanding of what it is that you want to pursue. So like for me, Tony DeMello gave me a clear understanding what my problem was, what the solution was, and what was going to be involved. The few simple things that were going to be involved that I needed to first be patient with, but more important than even being patient with how long the timetable with the timetable for change. What was more important than even that is the constancy of. It's not a hit or miss thing. It's not something that, you do on Sunday and forget about for a couple of months, at a time, which I used to do. You need constancy. You need patience with your process, trust in your process, and constancy. You need to go about it every day, which is why this book is important. It provides you with that. And so what Tony DeMello provided for me was that kind of understanding, that structure, that way of looking at what I wanted to change, what needed changing, and what led to change, what actually produced change. And then within that structure, within that understanding, I've looked for people and connected with people to help strengthen my process. That's included a psychotherapist at times. That's included reading other people other than Tony DeMello. You'll find that the great mystics are all saying the same thing. They're all unanimous about the same thing. And the one thing they're all unanimous about is that all is well. Even when everything's a mess, all is well. And the way in which you come to see that is by breaking down the way in which you program to judge and continue to operate in false beliefs that your happiness is looking for, love in all the wrong places, looking for happiness in all the wrong places. That as you do it, the arrival point is the understanding, the experience that all is well, no matter what is going on in your life. If you're sick, still all is well, because within you're well. Health is inner peace. Healing is letting go of fear, whatever the situation you're in. And so it does help, to join a group of people, of like-minded people. But ultimately, it comes down to you being committed to waking up.
And challenging yourself. I just find when you read all the books about psychiatry and psychotherapists and you see all the work out there, it seems like people spend years with them and get nowhere. And so you have to make sure you're picking the right guide, not someone who's going to keep you in misery and keep you in that, but who will challenge you to step out. And I don't know that that's normal for that specialization.
Well, there are, if you're cognitive therapy is very much in keeping with Tony DeMello is talking about. So is person-centered therapy that was established by Carl Rogers. The fundamental belief of humanistic psychology challenged was that there's something wrong with people. They turned that completely around, and they came at it very differently. And the difference is that what they discovered through their research was that we have within us a directional tendency. That's what they called it, for our complete development. And the way in which it is realized begins with self-acceptance. And so psychology is in alignment with the mystics, and they're all in alignment with the poets. So it's important. You're absolutely right. It's important that who you choose is going to resonate with where you're coming from. And for it to resonate with where you're coming from, you have to be clear about where you're coming from. You have to have looked into something like Tony DeMello. And if you find that looking at this mystic or that mystic, this teacher or that teacher, you find one that really resonates with you, stick with that one. And then in pursuing support around that, pursue it with like-minded therapists, like-minded other teachers. And you know what you will find with the ones that have made a profound impact in their field, in the field of psychology, in the field of spirituality, you'll find they're all about the same thing. They're really not saying anything different from one another, because it all boils down to the truth. And the truth is the truth. It stands on its own. And there are a lot of people that function outside of the truth, that are full of hype. And so that's really important, that you find what doesn't feel like it's hyping you, that it's making these ridiculous promises that if you take, you follow them, that you will get to the Holy Land. DeMello isn't talking about that at all. He's talking about coming home to yourself. And so you want to just find those people that resonate with that, if that resonates with you, and you'll be fine. You'll be on the path that is meaningful to you, and that path will grow.
Is there anything that we should have talked about today with regards to the book and the journey that we didn't get a chance to?
Well, I just always like to emphasize much of what we're saying here is that, first of all, it's a sad fact that it's hard to find a completely happy, completely fulfilled person. It's like 4% of the population, right? And the irony is we're born happy. We're born free, but we become trapped in limited thinking and limited beliefs. We're born with an open heart that stress and fear so easily close. We're born beings of immeasurable worth, each and every one of us. but we often feel like we're ashamed of ourselves. We often feel like we're not good enough. We often feel like we don't deserve to be happy. We don't deserve to feel joy and peace. There's a field of divinity, a field of joy within us and surrounding us that's there all the time, there to make life meaningful, there to make life rich and full. But we become blocked to seeing it. And so we need to understand that society programmed all that out of us, stamping into us the belief that happiness and self-worth are something we acquire. We don't acquire. We don't acquire it. We just remove those blocks, that programming. And I like to leave people with the thought that you're not broken. There's really nothing in you to fix. There's really just removing something that's in the way, so that what you are, the true thing, the true power that you are, the true light that you are, begins to shine, and it will shine all by itself.
And I think that's so very, very true. And a perfect way to end this. If people would like to learn more about the book, about the programs and so forth, what is the best way for them to do that?
They can go to our website, the DeMelloCenter.com. They can join the DeMello community. That's a really great thing to do, DeMelloCommunity.com. And they can pick up one of the DeMello's books. One's on your bookshelf there, the book Awareness, which you applaud, as well as these new books. I love the book Stop Fixing Yourself. And this book of Tony DeMello, I thought your question was great. Do we need to go all 52 weeks? My suggestion, take it 1 week at a time. See what happens. The old AA saying, one day at a time. Enjoy the day. Enjoy the week you take. And if you find that you're doing fine after 3 weeks, hand the book to someone else.
And the last time you were on, we went over Stop Fixing Yourself and went deep on that book. And I know people
I love that book.
Very much enjoyed that episode as well. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, Rocky, pleasure to be with you. You're great.
Are you ready to face the mirror and question yourself and your beliefs? Are you ready to just let go? Just be happy and content. Be thrilled. You don't need anything else or anyone else. We've talked about this on so many episodes. Check out the book if you want to take this journey. I know I'm enjoying it. If you enjoy or get value from Richer Soul, I'd really appreciate it if you would support it by forwarding it to a friend or sharing it wherever you share podcasts. If there's someone who could benefit from listening to this episode with Don, why not share it with them? Next week, we've got Yigal Adato to talk about unlocking the leader in you. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.